Hello everybody, I'm Taluka from Markers and Minions, and this is my second episode of Plan With Me. In today's Plan With Me, I'd like to go over Unit 2 and implementing small groups. Before we begin though, I just wanted to reintroduce myself because I've got a lot of new members. I teach third grade and I've been teaching Benchmark for 2 years now. I first started out on the adoption committee for my district 2 years ago. And then last year I taught Benchmark to a 2-3 combo class. And this year I have a straight third grade class. So that's my experience so far with Benchmark. And I created this group just to have a positive space and get ideas and teach others and also learn from others, because I definitely have not done every single component of Benchmark. I still have a lot to learn as well. Also, before we begin, I just want to let you all know that I have 131 pending members, people who haven't answered the screening questions. So if you've added any friends, please let them know that they need to answer those questions before I let them into the group. I'm really trying to get strict with that because I've had a lot of strange people trying to get into our group. So I want to be able to make sure that only teachers are accessing our group, or admin or TOSAs or whatever, and not just random people from South Africa, for example. Someone from South Africa really wanted to join our group. Okay, so now let's dive on into planning Unit 2 and talking about small groups. Oh wait, I lied. Let's talk about the giveaway first. So I did a giveaway last week, I think I started it, just for fun. And I had like 70 or so participate, and I did a random name generator, and I came up with these 3 names. Danielle Anderson Roebuck, you win my 5th grade bookmarks. Jill Marie Strug, you win my 4th grade bookmarks. And Jackie Tripp Charo, you win my Google Slides activities for the Technology Center. Yay! So I'll message you 3, and I will make sure that I can email you the PDF versions of this later on tonight. Okay, so to plan, you're going to need some materials. You'll need either your TRS or your weekly printouts. So I use the weekly printouts each week because it's easier for me. Instead of flipping through the TRS, I just print them off of our website. And I've actually got a video under our videos tab that shows how to access anything that's from our online component to print out from a PDF version. So here's week 1, week 2, and week 3. So you'll need those. You'll need the template I created. It's available for free on my TPT shop. If someone could post a link, I would love to be forever. I'm constantly trying to make this better. Already, as I was going through this earlier today, I've noticed another mistake that I'm going to have to fix. So I have a K through K1 version, and then I have one that's 2nd through 6th. So the 2nd through 6th is kind of lumped together. But so far there are 2 versions. And if you have any suggestions for how I can make this better for us, then just let me know. Send me a message. So this is the cover. This is how you outline your entire unit. You can see it next to each other. And then we've got Unit 2, Week 1. This is the Week 1 page. And then the Week 2 and the Week 3 page are the same. So I just printed out 2 copies of this. So one will be for Week 2, one will be for Week 3. So you'll want that. And I secretly snuck up and did it already just so that I can stay on track while I'm filming this live. I also like to have this with me when I plan, the student version, so I can see the stories and kind of see how the lessons apply to the story, because that helps me pick and choose if I actually want to teach that lesson or not. That's it for planning Unit 2 for right now. All right, so if you take a look at your Week 1, you'll notice different close reading skills. I'm talking about this part. You'll notice different close reading skills throughout the overview. So I found that there are genre features and a character analysis lesson, a sensory language lesson, and then a compare contrast lesson in Unit 1. So I'm going to go ahead and plug that into my organizer first. I'll make some space here. So first, okay, I'm going to use my cheat sheet. Sorry, guys. Oh, and also I didn't highlight key events and summary. So I'm going to write that one first. Key events and summary. So this is specifically for 3rd grade, but you can adapt and modify this for your grade for sure. Then I have that analyze genre lesson. I have the character analysis. And if you look closely, this compare contrast lesson at the end of the week, you're actually comparing and contrasting the characters. So for me, that's definitely something I want to combine with this one, the character analysis chart. I think that's a good lesson to combine, save some time. So I'm going to put character analysis and compare contrast. And then we have that sensory language. That is a fun lesson. I'm remembering from last year. We did the Ballad of John Henry. And there was a lot of sensory language. Okay, and then there's similes. So see how I've combined those two. I had to add a little extra bullet point right there. Okay, and I'm going to go across this way. So for week 2, my close reading skills, comprehension skills, again, key events and summarize. Character analysis again, compare contrast again, and this time you're comparing the stories, not the characters. I think that might be it. Okay, let's start plugging this in. Key events, summarize, character. I'm going to write fast for those of you that aren't doing this right now and you're watching. I'm going to try to get this to go by quickly so you don't get bored. And then compare, contrast 2 stories. I'm not sure why my my video is pixelated. I don't have, my phone is connected to Wi-Fi. Let me turn that off. See if that frees anything up. Sorry guys, hope you're still able to follow along. So this is week 2. Ricky, this is just for planning. When I'm actually teaching, my lesson plan book, I have, where is it? My happy planner. I just stick it in here. But this is how I plan an entire unit, so I can see it side by side. Okay, week 3, I've got another character analysis, another key events and summarize, more comparing and contrasting characters, again, like week 1. And then I have this whole section on graphic features and illustrations and how the illustrations convey mood. So I'm going to plug these in. Summary. So as mentioned in my group guidelines, I'd really appreciate it if you don't bring in outside links. You can do that on your personal pages. I work really hard to help you guys. And so as a trade-off, I get to promote myself. All right. So here's week 3. So I can see right away that I've got a lot of lessons that spiral. And Jenny, there's only 4 spaces on the planning sheet. You might have to add a little bit more. I had to add an extra bullet down here. I try to combine lessons whenever possible for the sake of time in my classroom. So if I see that 2 lessons go really well together, or I know that 1 lesson's only going to take really realistically like 5 minutes, or maybe it's just something I can mention during another lesson, then I definitely try to do that. So now I'm going to use my Code My Thinking map up here, and I'm going to put a little spirally next to the lessons that I see repeat. So key events and summary, they're going to be doing that every week, all 3 weeks. So to me, this indicates that if I have to scrap a lesson because I don't have time, I might scrap one of those because I know we're going to be revisiting it. Hold on, sorry guys. There we go. Now, I also see that I have character analysis every week, which makes sense. That's our focus in Unit 2. And I see that in week 1 and week 2, we're going to be comparing and contrasting characters. In week 3, we're going to be comparing and contrasting stories. So that's another big repeating skill. I can see that similes repeat in weeks 1 and 2. The only thing that's exclusive to week 1, only 2 things, are the analyze the genre. So I'm going to put an important star next to that because that's important. I don't want to miss that. And then also the sensory language. So this is what mine looks like so far. In week 3, there's graphic features and analyze illustrations. To me, that sounds like the same thing. So I'm going to have to look more closely at those 2 lessons and see how they're different. And make sure that I hit that in week 3. And week 2 is a lot of review. So maybe if I don't get to week similes in week 1, I can push that to week 2, or key events and summarizing, I can push that to week 2. So now that that's outlined, I'm going to move down to the spelling and phonics skills. For week 1, I've got long E. Week 2, long I. And then week 3 is compound words. When I taught a combo last year, this was always one way that I could teach both grades together, both grade levels, because a lot of the times I would notice, for example, long E was week 1 for 3rd grade, and then it was week 3 for 2nd grade, and I just kind of moved those around to make my teaching a little bit easier for me. A lot of the language skills repeat too, the language and grammar. So for week 1, for me, it's going to be adjectives and adverbs. Sometimes those are tricky to find. So for example, I don't even see it on this. I don't see adjectives and adverbs. And then it's also punctuate dialogue. I don't see that at all on my weekly presentation, but then if I go online and I look at the grammar and spelling practice pages, I can see that that's what it has designated for this week. So I don't know why that happens. Just a heads up. So punctuate dialogue. Week 2 is coordinating conjunctions. And then the other thing is sometimes the grammar and language skill can be found embedded in your writing lesson. Although I don't see an example of that on these pages for this unit. But in our last planning video, we did find the language skill embedded within the writing because it's supposed to be taught in context. So week 3, we've got subordinating conjunctions. So this is where I am right now. So next is the writing skill or type. Every unit walks you through all 3 types of writing. So we have narrative, opinion, and informational or explanatory. So for week 1, the kids are going to be writing a fable. So that's a narrative. That'll be fun. Week 2 is explanatory. And week 3 is opinion for 3rd grade. And the last bit, sorry the line got cut off. The last bit is for your vocabulary focus. So vocabulary is meant to be taught in context. Benchmark will give you a list of vocabulary words, but it's really supposed to be taught within context. And so what I like to do is just have my kids pick out the vocabulary that's challenging to them. Whenever they're annotating their text, I have them circle words, and I usually use context clues to teach them how to figure out the meaning. However, in week 2, there's no vocabulary focus for week 1 or week 3 that I found, but in week 2, there's a skill called shades of meaning, determine shades of meaning. And that's just focusing on taking a word and finding words that mean the same thing but are stronger versions of it. So I'm trying to think of an example. Yelled, and then next would be screamed, and then stronger than that would be, I don't know, but you get the idea. So it's like building shades of meaning. So I've seen that lesson come up throughout the entire year several times, but most of the time you're going to just be focusing on context clues. So here's my overall view. Sarah, that's a good idea. If you're looking at your unit assessment, you can figure out which mini lessons you want to include or leave out. That's a good point. Before I continue, I want to point out that I did see some discussion about these assessments, and I want to point out the difference between the weekly and the unit. The weekly assessments are going to be testing the kids on the skills that you've taught them that week only, and the interim assessments, not the unit, the interim ones, those test on every single skill taught throughout the year. I know that some of in your training you learn that the assessments assess end of year mastery, and that makes it challenging to grade or assign grades in your grade book. So I think that's going to look a little bit different for all of us. I know for me, for example, I don't use the weekly or the unit assessments in isolation for grading. I'm going to look at other things, their reading level and how much they're progressing in a trimester, and informal assessment and whatnot. I'm not only using the score or the percentage from their tests, because another thing is these questions are hard and these are really different tests. And sometimes they might do really well in a mini lesson with you, and you can tell that they understand how to compare and contrast. And then when the question asks them to do so, it might stump them a little bit. So I don't think your assessment should be your end-all be-all, but that's just me. So that makes it a little bit easier for me to assign grades for each progress report. You put a lot of work into your maps. Are these things you can save and reuse as your guide year after year? You could definitely use these year after year. You can just keep these copies in your plan book. A colleague of mine, whenever we're planning, she has her plan book from last year next to us the entire time. For me, just the way that I teach, I don't really try to copy the same thing I did last year. I just see, what my kids need and kind of what my frame of mind is at the moment, and I adjust that way. But you can certainly reuse these, and then especially if you found your groove and you don't want to reinvent everything and you're teaching the same grade level next year, save it all, make copies, or just stick it in your plan book. Tina, I have not given the unit test yet. If I've given the weekly test, you suggest giving the unit test. I do. You don't have to use the scores, but I do give it. The way that I structure my units are week 1, week 2, week 3 is normal. And then instead of starting the next unit, I take that 4th week off and I do the inquiry projects to extend that learning. And I also give the unit assessment over the course of a week because it's really long. And so next week, for example, I'm actually not starting Unit 2 yet. It's my 4th week, so I'm going to finish our inquiry-based project from Unit 1. And then each day, let me look at my plan book, I think I'm having the kids do 6 questions about, from the unit test. So 1 through 6 on Monday, and then the next chunk of questions Tuesday. So it breaks it up for them. Yeah, so Jenny, that's what I suggest also. I did all the weekly tests as whole class. So I read it to them. I read the passages. I read the questions. I read the options, the answers, and I even did a think aloud and, I think this answer might work, but let's read on, that kind of thing. And I literally went through and I answered the entire thing with them. And so they could really get a feel for the types of questions. The inquiry-based projects are in the back of your TRS. They're called, inquiry-based projects. And then online, they're called content, connect across content disciplines, something like that. And that's on the online version of the TRS. Nina, I feel your pain. The tests are hard. I remember last year I had parents freaking out because their kids were coming home with just bombing those tests. I had to just reassure them that it's a learning process. They're gonna have to learn how to take those tests. They're challenging questions, and I had to reassure them that that wasn't the only thing that I was looking at when I was giving them grades. Janice, I recommend giving it to them, the test paper pencil, and then during your computer lab block, maybe have them take the test with them and then do the test online, just so they can start navigating the tools. The online assessments mimic the SBAC, same tools and everything, highlighting. So I tend to let them bring in their hard copy so that it eliminates the having to think about the answers, and they can just practice getting those answers into the test. Yes, Nina, look for progress, right? That means we're doing our jobs. Okay, let's move on to week 1. So for 2nd grade, week 1 has 2 shared reads and 2 short reads. K and First have also 4 stories. I think it's 2 mentor reads and 2 shared reads, I want to say. I didn't print out that template. In 3rd grade through 6th grade, we only have 2 short reads. So for us, it's going to be the 2 fables from Aesop for 3rd grade and 2 famous poems. So this is what I'm looking at. Our phonics focus is long E, and we only have 8 spelling words. There's 10 in 2nd grade. Now on Monday, after I introduce my new unit, I'm going to introduce the language focus, which is adjectives, adverbs, and punctuate dialogue. And for these kinds of lessons, I tend to not really follow the TRS and just teach it myself. I also do something called the Big Cheese every morning, and that embeds a lot of grammar. So my kids will actually, they've seen that before this year, adjectives, adverbs, and punctuating dialogue. And then I'm going to introduce the phonics, the long E, in context using the shared read. If you're second grade. And then short read number 1. So that's where ours is going to be for third grade, the Aesop fables. And I do 2 reads. So the first read, I read it out loud to them and they follow along with their finger. And then the second read, they're going to read with their pencil and they're going to annotate. And then that's it for reading that day. Afterwards, we're going to analyze the writing prompt. And I just write it out on the board or on chart paper. And we talk about what's the prompt asking us to do, what source do we need to use, what type of writing will it be. And then if I have time, sometimes I have them refer back to their text and start looking for evidence. But most of the time, I'm going to have to move that over to Tuesday. Tuesday is the short read also. We're going to do the third read. So the third read is when we do the close read. So I'm going to bring in, where's my cheat sheet? My analyzing the genre. I'm going to do that as my first mini lesson on Tuesday. For third grade, we've got fables and folktales and myths in our unit, and so I want to be able to teach how to differentiate between them all. And Robin had a really good idea, show the Moana song. She posted the link on our page. That's such a cute idea. As if I don't have that song stuck in my head all day long anyway. Thank you, Robin. After I do my mini lesson, I'm going to review any vocabulary that the kids circled when they did their annotations the day before, and we're going to use context clues to figure out what those words mean. And then afterwards, we're going to switch on over to writing, and they're going to find the evidence, and they like to use a highlighter for this, and they're going to find evidence that support their prompt that they're writing to. And then I like to revisit spelling and grammar again, just a quick mini lesson. I'll do questions in just a minute. And then Wednesday is the word study. So the word study text is meant to teach the spelling and language and context. So for me, it's going to be geese. What is it? Geese for the queen. And eventually, that word study text might be something that I use just in small groups at like a word workstation. I'm not sure yet though. If you're second grade, you can start your shared read number 2. And then for us, 3rd and through 6th, short read number 2, you're going to do the student read and then the annotate the first and second read. And then the next day, Thursday, you're going to do your mini lesson. So I'm going to do sensory details. And that's using the ballad of John Henry. And last year, I remember it was my evaluation. I was evaluated last year. I had a combo class. It was the first year teaching benchmark all out. It was tough. But the lesson last year was really fun. I got a big piece of butcher paper and I wrote the 5 senses, like a tree map. Right? So like the 5 senses, and then it was hearing, seeing, smell, whatever. And then the kids got Post-it notes and they had to work with a partner to find text evidence that proved that the senses were, that there was sensory details. So I remember there being, I think John Henry's using his hammer and it talks about the fire sparking. And so a lot of the kids used that for like a seeing, they could visualize that. And so then they brought up their Post-it notes and they put it under the category, whichever sense it was. And so it was a good way to incorporate finding text evidence, working with your partner, and sensory details and imagery. Afterwards, we'll review the vocabulary from the day before, anything that they circled. And then the second mini lesson that I'm going to bring in, if time allows, is key events and summarizing. And for that, I like to just say, you know, we're writing a summary. It's almost like a text message. And so I just print out a template of a phone and they have to write a summary, and it has to be short and sweet like a text message, to the point. Friday, we'll go over our week 1 assessment. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to walk them through these tests. Probably. Maybe I'll start like the real full-on testing in Unit 3. I'm not sure. Depends on how much other data I have. If there's time, we'll do those reflection questions and the build, reflect, write. And then there's going to be the cross-text connection, and that's usually when there's the comparing and the contrasting. And I noticed that they're comparing and contrasting characters. So I'm going to bring in that character analysis lesson and just kind of combine those to streamline it. So that's what my week 1 looks like. And then if I don't get to any of these, I'm going to try to plug them in here. I think I'm going to stop here and then switch over to small groups. If any of you want to see my other plans for the other weeks, I can post pictures of that. Does that sound good? Can I move on? Let's answer a couple questions and then I'll move on. So Jen, informal assessments as well, but can you please be more specific? So I'm looking to see, you know, that especially in the beginning, I'm getting to know my kids and I'm seeing what they're able to do. I try to separate participation from actual, you know, skill set. But, you know, anytime I'm calling on them, if their answers completely, I have some kids, their answers are completely off, and I have some who are spot on, and I notice can go even deeper and really help guide my lessons. And so that's the kind of thing that I look at as well. And then we also, at our school, we have SRI. So that's like the Scholastic Reading Test online, and it gives them their Lexile level. So I look at that as well. And I compare their SRI from the end of last year too. So I don't just look at their score from the beginning of the year and think, oh, okay, that's what score they are. I try to see if there was that summer slip. So maybe they're actually higher than what they're testing. Oh, Nina, yes, my character map, I'm actually going to introduce that on Friday. Because like I said, I'm not starting Unit 2 this week. I'm starting it the next week. So I'm going to be introducing that on Friday, so at the end of my 4th week. But if I wasn't, I would definitely introduce it right here where it says introduce new unit on Monday. That's usually how I like to do it because I'm trained in Project GLAD, so I really like those kinds of posters when I bring in those 5 or 6 categories that have those vocabulary words that we can just apply to every single text that we read. When do you complete the graphic organizers that are found at the end of each week's passages? So those are the build, reflect, write pages, and that's what I mean by the reflection questions on Fridays. Sometimes there's time for that, sometimes there isn't. Last year I did maybe half of those. I didn't do all of them. Tina, if I take 4 weeks to get through each unit, do you get through all the units by the end of the year? No. So by SBAC last year, which was end of March, April maybe, I got through unit 8, the one about weather. And then I did the rest afterwards. But I felt that they were prepared. How many and what stations do you use? Okay, so let's switch on over to small groups. So the way that I've thought of small groups, my colleagues and I, the way we thought of small groups for this unit are going to look different than what maybe Benchmark suggests. For me personally, I can't really handle more than one rotation a day, which is like, well, how are you going to meet with your low readers every day? I'm not. I'm going to just see how it goes with Unit 2 and then adjust from there if I need to. I'm not going to be meeting with each group more than once, if that makes sense. So on my TPT, I've uploaded, you can download it for free, my small groups planning and charts, my template and my charts. So we decided, my colleagues and I, that we're going to have 4 groups, and they're going to visit one station a day, one center a day, and each center is going to be 30 minutes long. We decided that like 2 15-minute centers was just not going to be enough, especially with that guided reading group, and we didn't want to rush and lose time with transitions. So we're just keeping it simple, and if I adjust mine, I'll let you guys know, and I can always update this to better fit your needs. So these are my stations. I have the technology station, the meet with the teacher, that's going to be your guided reading, word work, read to self, writing. And then I also have an RTI group. We're lucky this year. Our RTI teachers are going to be push-in. Yes, we have separate RTI teachers, which is amazing at our school. And they're going to push in, and they're going to take a group each week. The way that it's going to work is it's going to be RTI that targets writing. So my centers, my groups are based on reading level. RTI is based on writing. So we decided that each week our RTI teacher would pull a group of kids based on writing ability, not reading. So they might pull a kid from the writing center, from the read to self center, because our writing groups might look different from our reading groups. So whoever's visiting our RTI teacher for that week will not go to their reading centers. So I know that this poster probably doesn't apply to most of you, but I threw it in there anyway. And then I have an expectations poster. Next week, my 4th week of Unit 1, I'm also going to be going over each day. I'm going to be focusing on a different workstation because I skipped the first 15 days, so I didn't actually go over the workstations. So this is what I'm going to also be doing next week. And on each poster, I laminated them so I can use a marker. I can write down what their task is, or I can write down, this is what you look like at the writing station. This is what you sound like. I can put that kind of thing on here too. So, first things first, you're going to have a page like this that's scribbled all over when you're trying to make your groups. Ours are based on Lexile levels, and as you can see, I've got a range. I have BRs all the way to, what's my highest? 788? Yeah. Oh, I thought I had higher than that. But anyway, I'm grouping them basically into below, basic, proficient, and advanced. And obviously I've got some really jumbo groups over here and really small groups over here. In my classroom, I have flexible seating, so I can't really do centers like groups anyway. So my kids are going to have their task and they're just going to complete it wherever they are. I'm not going to have like designated spots. So this doesn't concern me as much because I'm not going to necessarily have like 10 kids all grouped together in one area of my classroom. We're using Lexile levels, but eventually I want to be a superstar teacher and use guided reading level, which is what's included in Benchmark. I wrote down where to find those assessments for you guys. So those of you who are going to use the Fountas Pinnell guided reading levels, in your foundational skills assessment book, you're going to go to teacher section 4. That's what it looks like online. I'm not sure about in the hard copy. Teacher section 4, and those have these reading passages, and they have questions, comprehension questions, and it assesses fluency, comprehension, intonation, and it's a quick test, and then you can get a letter. So eventually I'm going to switch on over to that if I can get some help from like maybe our curriculum specialist or someone who can help me assess, because it's going to take a little bit more time than doing Lexile levels on the computer all in one shot. But our small readers that are included in our program have both. So in this reader, for example, the Lexile level is 430, and the guided reading level is level M. So you can use either one. So I previewed all the books with my grade level, and we decided, based on the levels that were represented in our class, we decided on these readers. And that's where this came in handy. That's why I added this later to the download, the file, because I thought I need something to make this a little bit more clear. So I wrote down the reader that I was using, the level, and then the students that I want based on their Lexile level. So that's helping me organize my groups. This is what our SRI printout looks like for their Lexile levels. It's a computer test. It's just something our school does. All right, now each station. In the Meet with the Teacher station, we're going to be doing these. Guided reading level, books, guided reading. In the writing station, we decided to have the kids, that's right, work on their prompt. So we're going to analyze the prompt on Monday, and then the kids are going to be writing to their prompt throughout the week in their center. Now, what about the low kids? They're going to need to see a modeled lesson. So we decided to try to fit in like a modeled prompt on Tuesday, the next day, just so that we don't have to front load everything Monday. And then Monday, have our high kids go straight to the writing center, since they most likely won't need to see a model first. So that's how we're going to try to work around that issue. So they're going to just be working on that prompt. They'll have 30 minutes to do so. And for us, the way that we're treating those prompts are just quick writes. Do you know how to write to the prompt? Do you know how to analyze it and write the correct type of writing? Are you able to bring in a source? So we're not actually going to be seeing if they're going through their whole writing process. In the Read to Self station, we decided that our kids would do those text-dependent question bookmarks that I made with those questions that pertain to their text for close reading. Where'd that go? Oh, mine disappeared. Their textbook. And our low kids who might not be able to do those text-dependent question bookmarks, I might experiment with pulling in the second grade text or even a first grade text and have them work on that with bookmarks, or just annotate, even just annotating during the Read to Self. After that, they can get free choice reading, because I think that's important too. I hope I'm not going too fast. In word work, I'm going to have them work on the spelling and grammar for the week using my pamphlets. You can also find the these pamphlets. Everything that I make is going to be found in Benchmark. I literally just pull from Benchmark. So you can actually find these worksheets on the website, and you can print it off as a PDF. So like, this is one worksheet, this is one worksheet, this is one worksheet. I just have pamphlets because it's a little bit more fun for my kids, and I don't have to print off a zillion pages. So that's what I'm going to have them do during word work. And I'm also going to teach them how to do the vocabulary squares, where they have to use a dictionary to find the vocabulary definitions, just to bring in some dictionary skills. There was one other thing that I thought of during word work. I don't remember now. Eventually, I might try to bring in some fluency. Benchmark has decodable passages online. They're good passages, and they bring in your phonics skill for the week. They incorporate your phonics skill, but they don't have any task associated with them. So I might try to, if I have time, create like a task that goes with each decodable. So I might give them the story and then say, highlight all the words you can find with the long A or whatever. So that's something I might also do during word work eventually. Technology, we're lucky enough that we got Chromebooks. I think they're Chromebooks. One cart that we're going to share between the grade level. So my kids are going to be using Google Slides. I have them set up on Google Classroom, and I made like this Google Slides activity that has just different things that they can work on. Some of it's word work, some of it's writing, some of it's response to reading, some of it's like filling out graphic organizers. So I'm going to be using that. And then also Benchmark, if you have your kids log on, Benchmark has this cool component where they can actually listen to whatever's being read that week in class. So they can click on any of these books, or they can click on their Text for Close Reading book and listen to it. And if you fiddle around with the bookshelf, that's a really cool feature as well. So the kids, I don't use a bookshelf just because I let my kids look at anything up until like 4th grade. I don't let them go all the way to 6th grade because otherwise I'm going to have all of them trying to go and listen to 6th grade text. And so they just kind of experiment that way and listen to selections. And I think it's even better if they hear the story before we read it, because then they have a little bit of background. So that's what I'm doing for my stations. I got this blown up. This is what's included in the file that you can download. I got it blown up so that I can write over it. Group 1, these would be my low kids. I'll have to think of a nice name for them. And then like Monday, they might do, word work, whatever, and just kind of post this in the classroom. Another thing I brought home from my classroom is the text for ELD. I don't have ELD kids this year. So Janice, I noticed you asked something about that. What about your ELD group that you need to meet with for 30 minutes daily? I'll ask my colleague because she got the ELD cluster. I think she is going to be incorporating that into her small groups. And again, we're really lucky. We have an ELD teacher who will push in. So I know that you guys are in charge of, most of us are in charge of ELD, RTI, all of that. We're lucky that we have that set up. So, but I'll ask to see if she has any advice. But I thought I'd also bring this in for my lower kids, especially my kids that, have learning disabilities. I have the IEP cluster this year. So I've got like 9, maybe, 7 to 9 kids that go to RSP, and they're definitely not reading at grade level. I like this because it outlines what you're reading in class. Let's see. So here's It's My Right. Condenses it, makes it a little bit more manageable. It adds more pictures, which I think these pictures are awesome. There are also, for ELD, this is a little bit unrelated, but someone said online that oftentimes the stories in this ELD book don't have the entire story, and therefore the point is, the main idea or the point is omitted. And I thought, well, that's really weird. Why would Benchmark do that? So then I pulled mine out, and I realized that they don't have the entire story for some of these. Sorry, excuse me. Because that's not what the task is asking. So, for example, here's for Unit 2, the 2 fables. This is not the end of the story, but their task, their ELD standard, why do you think the fox is complimenting the crow? So that might be like more of a language skill, so more ELD focused. So that's my justification. I think that's why they don't include the entire story. And then I like that it reinforces what's going on in class during ELA, so it just kind of hones in on one particular spot of the story. So this might be cool to bring in for my low kids during, the read to self station or something like that. Okay, let me catch up with comments. Yeah, so each group does 1 task per day for 30 minutes. Yeah, LAUSD, I know I taught for LAUSD and we had that designated ELD block. Ours was 45 minutes. Tina, yeah, this would be great to preload. Did a trainer tell you that, or is that like an administration thing? ELD time needs to be during ELD, like designated ELD, and not brought in during ELA. They just love to make our lives hard. Yeah, designated ELD. I remember that. I'm going to seat my ELs together and teach the EL lessons to all students. Every third grade student is a language learner. I think the lessons in the EL book are too valuable not to use them with all the students. Honestly, that's how I did it with LAUSD. Most of my kids were ELs, but I definitely had non-ELs, and I just taught it whole class for our 45-minute block. Stacy, I'm going to be seeing one group a day. We'll see how that goes. I know that you're meant to see like 2 or 3 groups a day so that you can see your lower kids more often. But that sounds a little bit crazy for me. So as I'm just getting started with Unit 2, I'm going to start it off this way and then see maybe about switching it up as we progress. All right. I talked about my inquiry-based project before, and I added it for Unit 2. Some of you guys were asking about that. Last year, what I did was they created these trading cards. I used an index card, and then I just shrunk them down to be the size of a Pokemon card. And they had to choose a famous historical figure and focus on like the challenges that they overcame and impact that they made. And then they had to write a little biography about them. And then we connected it to Pokemon because my kids are obsessed with Pokemon. So we gave them all HP levels, which I don't know what that means, but if you look at a Pokemon card, they all have an HP level. And then also they had a attack, like whatever their attack mode was. So I had also like a little gifted cluster last year. They came up with rules for how to battle, and they came up with based on that person's challenge, that determined what their attack mode was or their HP. And so like, for example, Amelia Earhart won hands down because she actually died facing her challenge. And so if you got the Amelia Earhart card, you were golden. So I try to reproduce basically what I'm doing in my class, and I create like student pages. So if you want this, you can find it on my TPT. This idea is from Benchmark, and it's from grade 2. And but it doesn't come with student pages, so I just kind of created my own. And it comes with like some examples that you can use in your class. I'm really excited for this one. Brainstorming sheet, and then the templates. Oh, I'm sorry, like researching pages, learning how to cite sources. I should probably just take the paper clip off. I'm just being lazy. Research pages, and then the template that they can actually glue onto their index card. And then we have a print center, so I have the print center make a set for each kid, and so then they find these out on the yard for the next 2 months because they're battling each other and learning about famous historical figures. And I just love that lesson because it goes along with so many of the essential questions. I think I actually wrote them down somewhere. They're all so connected, which is a great thing about Benchmark. Like Unit 2, the essential question for kinder is, how are characters different? For first, how do we learn from characters? Second, what can we learn when we face problems? Third, how do our actions influence our lives? 4, how do we reveal ourselves to others? 5th grade, why do we value certain qualities in people? And 6th grade, how can people inspire and change us? So I love a project. I love those inquiry-based projects because they can really be used with almost, which with any grade and almost any level. And it really ties in the whole theme really well. Thanks, Kristen. For small groups, the 5th group of the week is meet with the teacher doing guided reading with the small readers. The 5th group of the week, I'm going to be meeting with a group every day with the small guided readers. Haven't filled mine out yet, but say this is my low group. For their first station on Monday, I want to give them something easy, word work maybe. And then with my medium low, I might start them off with meet with a teacher. I don't know yet. All I know for sure is my high group, I want them to go to writing first. Because they're not going to see that writing modeled. This is so hard for me, guys. I'm not this kind of learner, so this is kind of what I came up with my colleague. And once I plug in groups and start actually planning that part out, I'm sure I'll notice that I made a zillion mistakes. So if this doesn't work for you, or if you notice a glaring issue, let me know. Help me out. Yeah, Kristen, I came up with just 26 historical figures off the top of my head. I usually have the kids brainstorm themselves and see who they want to do for the project, and then inevitably whenever we regroup, there's like half of them want to do MLK, and I say, well, in the end we're going to be playing a game, and we don't want that many repeat cards, and so then that's when I'm going to suggest other people. So I have a mix of like women and scientists and activists. I try to have a range. Small group, teacher group, are you working in the same standard for each group? Maybe, maybe not. So I talked about maybe like with my colleague, we said if we don't get to any of the mini lessons that week, we might pull them in our small groups to kind of alleviate some of the time restraints that we have. So I might be doing the same standard, but probably not. RTI for us is 30 minutes every day. So it kind of works out. We're doing our small groups at the same time, which is like how it should be. Last year we had RTI and then we were expected to do small groups separately. And in RTI, we weren't using Benchmark. Our school rather, had bought this program that we were just not fans of. It didn't make sense because Benchmark has a very strong guided reading component, small group component that's perfect for RTI. So this year, that's finally what we're able to incorporate. Yes, Sarah, yeah. They go through to all 5, ideally. Right? Yeah. When I introduce the language focus on Monday, am I using the benchmark worksheets? No, I'm only going to use those for practice. When I'm introducing it, I'm going to just be teaching it myself. You can always look at the TE, but for me, for the most part, I can just kind of teach it on my own. I put also right here like the what each thing means. So like when I taught it last week, I kind of glanced at this, but for the most part, these grammar skills and the spelling skill I can incorporate in my teaching on my own, and I do something called the big cheese, so that brings in a lot of it. So Tina, I'm not going to make it for other grades. I would love to, but I just don't have time with, my 1-year-old and my hubby and then my actual day job. I tried to make this as general as possible. If you did want to do it, you can always modify it, make it a little bit harder or simplify it. I included definitely like, cite your sources, but if you're in 1st grade, you're probably not going to cite sources. 2nd grade, probably not. So If you guys want a better look at this, I can take pictures of that. So my pamphlets, these are the same thing as the worksheets online. They're just practice, so they're not going to be in context. The text for close reading, here it is. Oh no, I really did lose it. It has that word study at the end of the week, which has in context, so that's really great for teaching the skill. I'm going to be using these in the small groups because I don't really want to be doing worksheets during my main instruction. It's just my opinion. Barb, that's so funny. Pamphlets and you're like spelling. I can't tell you how many times I had to like delete. How do you spell pamphlets? It's such a weird word. Erica, do you borrow books from colleagues for your lower readers? Yes. I borrowed a lot last year. You can access them online as well. Obviously, you can click on any grade level and find the text, but if you want that physical copy, you can borrow from your colleagues. I did that. I also did that with the text for close reading book because they give us packs, I think, of 30, and most of us have around 25 to 28. So there are some extras. Do you assign tasks online? You can assign like a bookshelf for kids to listen to various books. I think you might be able to assign like the grammar worksheets online, but I've never done that. We just got our Chromebooks, so I'm going to be using my Google Slides just because I like to teach the kids how to use Google Slides and Google Classroom and all that. Word wall. When I taught second grade last year, I did not do a word wall with high frequency words. Because that's just me personally, because I'm really bad at remembering to add stuff to it. I think my other second grade teachers last year did do a word wall. We also we make these little spelling dictionaries for the kids at the beginning of the year that has all the high frequency words. All right, I think I'm caught up with questions. I hope I addressed everything. I'm working on, sorry, my window's open. I'm working on figuring out how I can take videos of myself teaching these lessons, take videos of small groups, and be able to post them onto the group. I have a TOSA from my district coming to meet with us next week, and I did mention to her that I wanted to film a video, and so she's going to, I'll bring it up again, say, hey, I want to film these centers so that teachers can actually get an idea of what it looks like, but I'll have to figure out like legality and all that. I do not give spelling tests. So how do you have the students practice the spelling lessons besides with the practice pages provided in context? So these are out of context. These are just worksheets. And then there's that one page where they're doing it in context. I like to incorporate a lot of my spelling and grammar in something that I do called the Big Cheese, which is not benchmark related. It's kind of like my equivalent to the morning meeting that a lot of teachers do. As soon as my kids come in, they get their blue spiral notebook and they meet me on the carpet and we write about each other. So each week we have a different Big Cheese and we interview them and then we write about them the entire week, and we're focusing, that's where I really bring in like, let's remember to indent, we need to capitalize proper nouns, all of the skills just in context as we're writing, because I think that's a little bit more meaningful than worksheets. But that's not included in benchmark, it's my own thing. So we can never thank you enough. You're welcome, Tina. Yeah, if I film from behind the kids, that's what I'm thinking, like filming from behind them, the backs of their heads, or just of their work, or something like that. I'll figure it out, Wanda. The trading cards are for the inquiry-based project for Unit 2. my inquiry-based project for Unit 1 was the Improve the Community project, and my kids have decided that they are going to donate to our local temporary aid center. So we're really going to be working on that next week. We've done all our brainstorming, our planning, and so this weekend they're actually doing chores to try to earn money. And we're going to buy like little toiletries and come up with these kits. They wanted to make survival kits. And then we're going to donate those. So that's from Unit 1. All right, friends. I think that might be it. I'm also working on video tutorials, so like where I record my computer screen. I had a few people reach out to me about how to assign assessments, how to grade assessments, how to navigate the website in general. So whenever I have time, I will get started on those. One person actually said that she's leading a PD and she'd like to show one of my videos outlining the kind of like an overview of the website. So I'm going to get started on that one pretty soon, now that most of us have our logins. Elizabeth, thank you. My enthusiasm and creativity with adoption. Thank you. Oh, Tina, I have the big cheese on my TPT. That was like probably one of the first things when I first started TPT. I was thinking, what can I share with others that hasn't been shared a zillion times? The big cheese. So I figured out how to actually put it into a lesson plan format and stuff. So that is on there. You're welcome, Sarah and Nina. You're very welcome. It's a lot of fun to be able to help you all. I find myself checking this Facebook group more than my own Facebook. It's fun to be inspired and to inspire others. All right, well, I will work on any requests that come my way. Send me a message if you want anything specifically, or if you want clarification on anything. And if you wanted to actually see this in detail, I'm happy to show you. And I hope you all have a really good week. Oh, I do have a blog, yes. There's not much on it, but I can post the link for you, Sherry. I try to keep up with like all the social media blogs and Instagram and all that. It's a lot, but I do have it all. All right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad. I'll also post pictures of my charts that I bring in. Since I'm very project glad, I make charts for everything. I'll show you what they look like now, like once I actually go over it with marker. I know those other videos were probably a little hard to follow because I did it in pencil. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.